to the show. It's the front bar. Thanks to the Brewery Fresh, Carlton Draft. Sean Burgoyne's obviously become a legend at the Hawthorn Footy Club. They've had so many, of course, and we're about to be joined by another. The legacy that this man's left behind at Glenferrie and Waverley needs no introduction or explanation. Please make him welcome Gary Ayres, everybody. Great to have you on the show, mate. Proudly wearing the Borough.
Well, they said you better actually rock and roll with it in tonight, mate, because we've had COVID and they're, of course, trying to lift a little bit of sponsorship. So the CFMEU, ETU, and get down to ETU Stadium and
we will.
Hopefully watch a few games that we can win.
The best hamburgers in Australia down there, the Borough Burger.
Second best. Second best.
Don't fight. Sorry. I do apologise.
I'll get the CFMEU onto you and sort this right out.
The list of achievements of your career is enormous. Let's have a look at you from the early days. You started as a forward, Izzy. Who and when moved you back? Can you remember the time that took place? You kicked a bag of five early in your career.
Yeah, I might have had a couple of games there where I was actually able to, I guess, get the big sticks moving. But no, it was when Yabby Jeans came to the club in 1981. And Yabby had a subtle way of telling you what you had to do. And, of course, he said, well, you played centre-half forward, you played full forward, you played half-back, you played centre. He said, I'm going to put you in the back pocket because you can't go any further back. I said, well, all right, I'm up for that. So he was the one that I guess came to the club at a time where I think we all feel a coach and a player, then they can gel because they say things the right way, they give you the confidence to play the game, and I was probably really battling there for the first 3 or 4 years.
That goal there, you kicked, that's the sealer. I reckon it's the best home and away game I've ever seen, round 6, 1989.
What are the details?
The final scores in that game, some young people watching the show won't believe that this is actually possible. The final scores, Hawthorn 26-15, 171, defeated Geelong 25-13, 163. You guys...
Can I just say... That's okay, but I thought our 2 goals 10 on the weekend. It was fairly significant.
You were 55 down just before half-time. You kicked one to get it to 49, and then a few moves made. You went into the midfield, into the centre after that. Can you remember... Do you have vivid memories of that game?
Yeah, you do a little bit because it gets brought up and obviously we talk about it and we don't mind talking about it when we win, of course, not when you lose. But it was an amazing game. Geelong probably couldn't have played that much better, really, when you think about it. I think it might have been 14 goals in the first half they kicked and Gavin Exel ended up kicking 9. And then there was those 1 or 2 moves and... Johnny Platten might have went off with a shoulder maybe, and I think Bucky might have been on one leg, and we just sort of got our mojo going in the third quarter. And all Yabby said was, look, we'll assess it at 3/4 time, but if we can be 4 goals closer, then we'll analyse it in the last quarter and see how you're going. Well, of course, I think we might have kicked 9 goals in the last quarter. Yeah, Jimmy the Freak Morrissey came on and he did a couple of special things, and some days it just happens to go for you, as we all know. But yeah, it was a pretty special game, and I think that was the forerunner to then what happened later in the year in that 89 grand final. Who would have thought that both of them were classics in a sense?
Well, the archivist here said to us, just go back and watch it, not just for fun, just watch it for fun.
It's an amazing game. If you can find it, it's an incredible game of footy. Yeah.
Izzy, how long have we got you for tonight?
Well, it depends how many stories you want me to tell you.
I just wasn't sure going off some of your old presses.
The type of kid that can basically play the whole year in the seniors.
Well, we hope so, but it's only early days.
Yeah.
And Matthew Robbins also played well in defence.
Yeah, he played okay, and again, these boys will get exposure because we've got a few injuries.
Use King sparingly, Gary.
Boys do it.
Andy and Mick, and then just make sure you ask me the right question.
I was going to say, you see the way they all got out of your way?
Yeah, they weren't telling you to say.
Might have dropped the shoulder.
The press conference version of a don't argue.
So you mentioned the 89 grand final. I mean, it's one of the most famous grand finals. A lot of people say, the greatest grand final of all time, 89. Have you played in a more physically taxing, more brutal game of footy than this?
I would say not. Obviously, there I got Gazza there with probably a little bit of the old people's elbow came out there. I reckon he might have kicked 10 if I hadn't done that. He only kicked 9, so we won the game. But no, it was brutality really, because the fact, as we know, when you get to grand finals, there's just nothing that you want to do more, and that's obviously win a premiership. And that was pretty special because we'd won 88, and Alan Jeans had the year off with the aneurysm, and then his sole focus, or what he was telling us, you've got a wonderful opportunity to go back to back.
Yep.
And that was something that we'd missed out on previously. And we were just so self-driven to try and achieve that. As it turned out, we did. But yeah, there was a fair bit of carnage that day.
And do you remember much about the famous speech at half-time?
You sort of do, because we've had a few reunions over the years, and of course everyone likes to tell a few tall stories and they get bigger and better. But the speech at half-time became quite emotional, I think, for a lot of us, because it was a story about paying the price. And it was about a boy who saves up enough money, and this is my sort of recollection of it. It might vary a little bit. And he had some money, and he said to his mum, "I want to go and buy a pair of shoes." And Yabby had this wonderful ability to just take you to a particular place where you were just hanging on every word he would say, and then he would sort of just bring you back down. So he had that ability to raise and lower his voice. Anyway, it got to the stage where he said, the boy asked his mum, "Should I buy the expensive pair or buy the cheap pair?" Mum said, "If you buy the expensive pair, then they'll last and last forever." And he asked us to pay the price, and he was yelling. And of course, a few of us are looking and think, is he going to have another brain aneurysm? Or is he going to have a stroke, or we've got to pick him up? And we are just absolutely, I guess, to the eyeballs, ready to go out and play, you know, as well as...
Can I ask, were the shoes Crocs?
Hopefully they weren't desert boots, Mick.
So you've done what only...
Crocs, now I'm tearing up. Now I'm getting emotional.
You've done what only a couple of others have done, that's win multiple Norm Smith medals. But I don't think Andrew McLeod and Dustin Martin can claim to have won them the way you did. Is it fair to that the hamstring in 86 and the fractured cheekbone in 88, you were injured in both of those games?
Yeah, well, Tucky and I had hurt our hamstrings in the prelim against Fitzroy in the 86 game, and anyway, we both were there on the Monday, and Yabby came up and said, "Just get through training this week. It's grand final week, and even if you fall over flat on your face, the crowd will still clap you because it's grand final week." So we had to go to the club on the Friday, and anyway, we met Yabby there, and of course he said, "Right, we're going to go and get a fitness test done." Well, we went to go to our cars, and he said, "No, you're coming with me because we're doing it at Scotch College."
Right.
So we jumped into his car, and anyway, there's the two ovals, the one down below St Kevin's, or there's the one at the back. Anyway, we went to actually get out of the car, and he said, "No, I don't want anyone to see you." So here's Tucky and I in different stages of undress, with Yabby and his big ears and head in the front. So could you imagine if we had mobile phones now, what would have been going on? And anyway, we got changed and we got out onto the ground, and he said, "Right, I want you to come towards me." So he rolled about 2 footies at me, and then he said, "I want you to run up and back, and if it feels okay, it feels okay." Anyway, I thought, oh, well, if it goes, and it's all over. Anyway, I got through the 2 run-throughs, and he said, "You're finished." And then
That was it.
That was it. That was the fitness test.
I could have passed that one. I could have played in that grand final.
And then Tucky, 40 minutes later, I'm sitting in the car going, "Well, God, we've got to get to the parade. We've got the lunch and all this sort of stuff." And anyway, we get back to the ground and we had to go to the parade. We're getting ready, and Tucky goes, "Clearly I can see who the favourite is out of us two." He was the captain at the time. Anyway, I got the old injection before the game and went out and played on Reece. But even that was a little bit interesting too, because Yabby had this format where he would write all the names of the players on the board, and it got to the last 2 positions, the interchange or the wing. And of course I thought, oh, he's remembered I played ordinary in the 85 grand final, I'm on the interchange. And anyway, he's gone, "Nah, Ayresy, you're on the wing." And I've gone, "Oh, thank Christ for that." He said, "You don't have to be fast to play on the wing. You're not fast, but you do read the play all right. You're on Reece James."
Right, there it is.
And
the rest is history.
We saw you getting that Norm Smith, and it was pretty hard to get that medal over what I consider to be the greatest mullet in the history of the AFL, which leads us into tonight's Rewrite the Rules. Here we go.
Thanks, Mick.
We're going to waltz through some of the finest moments of the greatest mullet ever to take the field in AFL. Let's have a look at early doors. Have a look firstly at Paul Roos mucking round down the shallow end of the pool. And that's and look at that. Now listen, look at that. That's not business up the front, party up the back. That's party up the front, 3-day bender out the back. Look at that.
Roos had put a knife to a gunfight, hadn't he?
Actually, I forgot how long it actually was, Mick.
Was that the bet? Can you think of a time when it was bigger or more lush than that?
No, I reckon that was about as luscious and as probably as big as it was. So,
But like your footy, your mullet was versatile. It could do heaps. It had a bit of business in it from time to time.
Oh, the corporate mullet.
Rest for the moment.
That's one of your best efforts, so versatile. But here we are. This, I think, is my favourite single shot involving mullets ever at the Brownlow.
Oh,
now, there you are in the
Derm's
foreground.
in the background.
And Derm in the background. All I can imagine when I see that is you guys sharing a room and having to use the bathroom together. Now, that would take about 5 hours. Did he used to look up to you in the mullet?
Well, it was funny how it sort of all turned out, but I'd have to say yes, I did, because I was a bit older than Dermy anyway, but that was the look at the time when we rolled with those. There was a little bit in there. Just to be different.
It's an astonishing mullet to take the attention off the turquoise bow tie you're going with.
That's
a green suit too.
That is the greatest head of hair in the history of the VFL or the AFL.
Absolutely.
Were you very... it's the best head of hair I've ever... clearly the game has ever seen. I don't mean to be silly, but were you hair proud? Like, did you... did you...
Well, you don't mind rock and roll with something like that. But I must have to thank my old man, because he used to have the old home clippers, and me and my brother had to sit in the kitchen chair. We would cover our ears, and he'd just give us a crew cut. Every week we would have a crew cut. So maybe there's something in having a crew cut.
You're just sitting there going, one day.
I'm going to have the best mullet. I'm going to have the best mullet.
Your whole head revolted. Just off a whim.
That's right.
What advice would you give for mullets just starting out? If take this one for example, this is Sean Darcy. There you go. Is an example of...
It was like baby's first mullet.
Yeah. Is it a stick with it, or is it a give up situation? How are you coaching him through that?
I would say a little bit more growth on the side, okay? But that's only like a little baby minnow mullet. As we know.
Back. Hopefully it grows a bit bigger.
It's got to get through the awkward phase. Don't go anywhere. There's plenty more of Gary Ayres on the other side of the break. It is the front bar. We're here for the brewery fresh. Because Hawthorn kept winning all these premierships, they played in a lot of these international games. This is 1986, Yokohama. There's our guest tonight, Gary Ayres. A week or two after winning the VFL premiership. Ayres, you played in a lot of these. There's 25,000 this day at Yokohama. How did you go about treating these games?
Did you enjoy them?
Yeah, what
did you look forward to them?
He played second base that day.
And that's what it was like. Did you notice we had to have the elbow and knee, because if you fell on that stuff, you just got cut real bad. I think a few of the boys like Dermy and Jason might have put the little... remember the tattoo that had like the spider's web on your elbow? Maybe a bit of the Brutus beefcake sort of style.
How seriously do you take those games? Obviously, you're playing against an old foe, or 2 weeks earlier. You know.
Only on the day.
Yeah, right.
Only on the day, if you get what I mean. Only on the day.
Well, I mean, Tucky remained professional throughout, particularly when it came to the trophy presentation. Here he is here.
Jack Hamilton.
Little corsage.
Tucky would like that.
Is he one, or is he in the bridal party? What was going on? And there's the fans have travelled.
Where does that piece of silverware sit now, do you think?
I got no idea, to be honest. We went over there, and it was always about having a good time. Look, you're flying the flag, as we know, for Aussie rules, and we played in quite a few of those. It was pretty hard to sort of get yourself up whether you won or lost after that 7 consecutive grand finals that we played in, and then you'd find yourself within a week or two you're flying somewhere. But it was a great experience. You see the world, and of course, but then the worst part about it was you got back, and 4 weeks later you started pre-season training. But look, the chemistry and I think the feeling between us all was such a strong, united group you know, we just loved each other's company and having a good time.
So you're captain in '93,
Yep.
and it turns out to be the last year at the footy club, and Alan Joyce is coaching the footy club, and he drops you in 1993, and it was really controversial at the time. This is how it played out.
Late last night, the Hawthorn skipper suffered the biggest blow of his career. An indifferent performance last week on Carlton's Ron DiIulio cost Ayres his place in the Hawks lineup. At three-quarter time, he was dragged by coach Alan Joyce, who today said Ayres' omission is in the best interests of the club.
I think too personally it's a mistake and it's the wrong decision, but you've got to abide by what the club has decided to do, and whether you agree with it or not, it's another matter, but I'll be out there tomorrow doing my best.
So, I just want to ask you, you said that you'd abide by what the club wants, and the club wanted you to play in the seconds and then sit there and watch the firsts, because it's what the club wanted and it's in the best interest of the club. Right. How'd that go for you?
As you know, Mick, you change your mind. You don't always toe the party line. You might say it out in public, but when it comes to...
So how much of the game did you watch?
I watched the first quarter.
And tell us what happened after that.
Well, I got a bit bored, and I think there was that sort of frustration. Clearly, I was captain, and of course you can't play. So I'd gone out and played in the reserves, albeit, and yeah, that was pretty tough to take. And I was feeling quite hungry after the game. So I actually stopped off at the Corio Roadhouse.
Magnificent establishment.
It is. It's got different photos of, you know, different sports people.
If you say they've got a great hamburger,
So, of course, I got a coffee and something to eat and just got on my bike, so to speak, and I went home. On the Monday morning, I got a phone call from Joycey. He said, you need to drop into the club and see me. I thought, oh, something's up here, isn't it? So anyway, he said, oh, what'd you think of the game? I said, well, what, mine playing in the twos or the seniors? He said, no, the seniors. And I said, oh, well, it's pretty disappointing because we lost. He goes, how much of it did you watch? And I started thinking, oh, I think he knows something here. So I said, well, only a quarter. And he goes, it's not the right thing to do, you're captain and all that. So I just had to suck it up. And anyway, when we sort of got back to just talking a little bit normal, I said, how did you know? He goes, I stopped in at the Corio Roadhouse and they said, they blew me cover.
So you get back into the seniors, you lead the footy team into an elimination final, and the campaign ended there. The next year, you're coaching at Geelong under Malcolm Blight. How did that come about, Gary?
Well, we obviously had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to either keep playing captain and coach in the VFA, as it was at the time, or the reserves coach at Geelong at the time had just left, and anyway, Stephen Wells rang. Yeah. And of course, I said, oh, yeah, I'd be up for a chat. And he said, I want you to catch up with Malcolm. Anyway, then I rang Yabby, as I had done, because he was sort of like my mentor, I guess. And he said, hey, I think you might want to go assistant coaching and don't do the, you know, being a playing coach. If you stuff up, well, it's all right for a coach, but if a player stuffs up, you know. So he gave me one of those sort of chats. Anyway, we went through 94 and Malcolm got to the grand final and unfortunately lost again, which he was an amazing coach. And I think that was, what, 89, not 3 losing grand finals. Yep. And anyway, I'd been coaching the reserves all year and Malcolm said, that's it. I got interviewed for the job and Greg Durham was there at the time and Ronnie Hovey was president. Just amazing guys, both of them. And I was only 34.
2 years out of playing.
Yeah, and got the opportunity to coach, which I'm forever thankful for too, but I was a rookie coach, put it that way.
I want to talk about Gary Ablett, senior, for a second. You played with him, you played against him, and you coached him. What did you prefer?
Playing with him.
Playing with him. Tell us a bit about him. I mean, look, I remember this era. And he,
amazing, Mick. Look, the things that he could do, he was a powerhouse player. He certainly was able to elevate himself, which not a lot of guys can, let's be honest. And there were moments in games, a little bit like a Dusty, who just seems to know when that moment is. And he could do that, and he'd come out and kick 5 or 6 goals. And there was a time, it ended up being a little bit humorous, but we actually used to have guys ticked off for when they arrived at the ground, and we're playing at Cardinia Park. Anyway, we then got to a point in time where we had to start our warm-up. And the late Phil Walsh, who was my strength and conditioning coach and just a great person, he came up and he had this worried look on his face. He said, I cannot find Gazza anywhere. And I said, have you looked in the toilet? He said, yes, I have. Have you looked in the change room? Yes, I have. Have you looked in the plunge pool area? Yes, I have. Have you looked in the physio room? Yes, I have. And Gazza used to actually hide in the, it was like a sort of a broom cupboard. He would actually be on the telephone and shut the door, but you could still see the telephone lead going into the broom cupboard. Anyway, I said, Walsh, you're going to have a look in there. I cannot find him anywhere. I said, well, he's here, because we know he was ticked off. Anyway, I said, look, you go and get the boy started and I'll go and look for him. So the only place we hadn't looked was the boot starter's room. And the door was closed. So I've then opened the door, and here's Gazza in his full kit, and he's got a full 20 a meat pie and another one half eaten. I said, Gazza, we've got to go out and warm up. We've got to go and play the game. He said, can I finish my second pie? I said, yeah, all right, quickly finish it up. So he come out. I think he kicked 6 or 7.
It was a simple time.
If you've gone from giving him the people's elbow, as you said, only a couple of years prior, how does that relationship go when suddenly you're coaching him? Is it different?
It is different, yeah, it is different, because Gary and I grew up in the same small country town, Druin.
Yeah.
So he lived up one end of the town and I sort of lived up the other. We played under 12s, under 14, so there was that sort of connection. Yeah. And it was interesting. You had to sort of cop the whole, I guess, bag of what Gary was and who he was and how he was. He kicked 125 goals in the first year that we were coach and player, so it wasn't a bad year. I think he said I stole his Christmas because I made him train a couple of times before Christmas, I think. And he always knew what he wanted to do, what got him up, and he'd always be bargaining. If we're going to do 6 figure eights around the centre square, can I only do 4? There was all these little sort of...
Bite of the pie.
Or trying to get in for pre-season training. He'd be off being an ambassador for somebody and he'd be over in South Africa or whatever. And look, it was interesting. And being a rookie coach, there were things that I obviously cocked up on, but you do make mistakes, as we all do. But one of the other times where the boys got a little bit funny was that we were doing a warm-up and Gazza used to bring his 2 boys, Gazza Jr. and Nathan. Yeah. Anyway, the boys started laughing in the warm-up and I thought, what are they laughing at? Anyway, I don't know whether it was Gary Jr. or Nathan, but you know the half-cat mascot? One of the boys had got his head and put it over himself, which had almost came down to his ankles, and had half-cat's paws and was going like this along the wall in the change room because he couldn't see. So I had to say, Gazza or Nathan, get that cat's head off.
You went from Geelong coach over to Adelaide. Did they accept you straight away in Adelaide? I mean, they kind of like their own a little bit.
Yeah, they do. But no, initially it took a little bit because I'm following Malcolm, who, as I said before, was a great coach. And the quirkiness of Malcolm compared to Alan Jeans or, Joycey. And I remember one time we were out at Waverley. Remember the coach's box used to sit in the public?
Yep.
And anyway, we walked out at quarter time and there was this guy about halfway down sitting on the end of the aisle. And anyway, he is just giving it to Malcolm, absolutely giving it to him. Malcolm's gone out, done his quarter time address, come back, then the bloke's still giving him absolute buggery while he walked up to the coach's box. Anyway, half time, we got to 3/4 time. And this guy must have forgot that Malcolm was coming back down. So he tapped me on the shoulder and said, watch this. So anyway, the guy was sitting there and he leant over to get his sandwiches out and started taking them out of the wrapper. And because he was preoccupied with the sandwiches, Malcolm's leant across and gone, boom! And the bloke jumped about 15 feet up in the air. Sandwiches everywhere. So we've gone down on the ground. Malcolm's given his 3/4 time address, come back. Anyway, the guy had a big sheepish grin on his face and he offered Malcolm a sandwich.
Well, you might have taken a few cues from Blighty how to deal with opposition fans. This is you in this famous game when you're coaching Adelaide against your old mob. It's a victory. And then you decide to pick a fight with a 90-year-old.
I think I was telling him the line-up at the bar in the Cats Social Club was quite long, so go and get me 2.
And luckily for you, you could speak fluent Geelong. Having been there.
That nearly cost me $5,500, I think.
It would these days, for sure. You've lived a gigantic life in footy. You currently coach a Port Melbourne. You've been there since 2008.
2008. Yep.
Couple of flags.
This is a great story as well.
They were cactus for a while there. You've stuck with them. You brought people on board. How proud are you of this football club and its capacity to endure?
Oh, extremely, Andy. Like, we were probably bordering on not being relevant way back at sort of, 06, 07 to a degree.
Yep.
There'd been alignments, but now I've always prided myself on trying to help the club be relevant, and it's pretty difficult when you're in a competition that's...
Well, you have, and there's the details. If you want to get involved, you said COVID's hitting everything. If you want to get involved with a local club, I can't think of a more important and historic VFA club in Melbourne.
Institution of
Institution
Victorian
it
and
is.
Australian football, Port Melbourne.
147 years old.
It's incredible.
17 premierships. We're the most successful
Now
club.
I'm going to show you a photo of you with a young fan.
Oh,
do you recognise that fan?
Isn't that the lady who might have ended up marrying Andy Martin?
Andy Martin. Do you recognise the woman in that photo?
Oh, I do. I married her. Not then. She was a bit young, but I married her.
She's got a good taste in guys, Andy. She's got a good taste in guys.
She Emma Race, a good number one ticket holder of the Hawthorn Footy Club nowadays. She is. So there you go.
So from the great man there, she really did settle, didn't she? I'm just saying, in a final decision, she's gone in a different direction than Gary Ayres' direction. It's more the...
Well, she's gone for salad instead of the humdinger.
She's settled. I want to thank you for coming in today. And we couldn't just before we go, I've got one quote. Just wanted to tell you this. I don't know why, but you played in one of the hardest teams of all time. I asked independently Robert Domenico and Dermot Brereton who was the hardest player they ever played with, and they both independently said you. So I don't know if they've said that to you yourself, but high praise from a team that was pretty tough.
Thanks for coming on.
And to honour your toughness.
Emma obviously stuck with the hard guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And to honour the toughness, I'm going to present you with this corsage. I got off. There we go. I got it off tucky, and I'll just pop that in there.
The cup, though.
We'll get you the cup as well.
You are a very brave man putting that on Gary Ayres, Michael Malloy. Thanks for coming on the show. Gary Ayres, our very special guest.